So welcome to the show. This is Pulp Mythos. I'm Brian here with Spencer and Larry, and we're discussing the season 10 finale of American Horror Story. I guess we're gonna go right into it. I didn't like it. I'm just gonna say it. To me, it was a waste. I really feel yet again the 1950s stuff, 60s stuff was really cool, and it was cool in this. All the stuff with Nixon and tying all the historical events and conspiracies and all that stuff with the alien invasion, even introducing lizard people. Like I loved all of that, and then having Miss Eisenhower be sort of the carryover to the present timeline, which we wondered if there was going to be something, but then to just be like, humans are shitty, and that's the end. You kill off the modern characters, and even the show didn't give a shit about them. Like, it was done almost for a comedy. In one case, completely as a comedy gag, with the decapitation and the metal orb.
Dude,
But
that was
I did laugh at that. I was like, but that felt pointless. The ending message was muddled because it didn't really make sense, because the idea that trying to play some kind of moral game here, and I'm like, well, the aliens have been capturing and slaughtering humans for years. You even went as far as to say they were responsible for a lot of these wars and all the horrible things over the last 50 or 60 years. I mean, okay. I don't know. It to me, it just all fell apart. That's my 2 cents. What do you guys think?
I agree. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time. it was, it's not just that it was not great and it didn't wrap up well. I thought it was funny, them tying all the things, basically all the conspiracy theories that ever existed, tied into this alien invasion. But the introduction of the lizard people, I thought was great. Had we had 3 more episodes to see where it went, why the fuck would you introduce them? What they should have done is fast forward to like New York and showed alligators in the sewers, and then went into Montana land, and then saw Bigfoot, and then did a flyover Loch Ness, and then show the monster and tie a couple other conspiracy theories into it, because there's no point in showing the lizard people at all. And knowing this was the final episode, when they tied that in, and when the end happened, I don't know if that part was recorded or not, but the commercial break happened, because I don't have the commercial free Hulu because it's cheaper. But I went to go pee, and I came back and I asked my wife, I was like, wait a second, because another show was on. And she was like, no, that's how it ended. I was like, wait, you're kidding. So it literally just ended. At least in the first 6 episodes, you had some kind of ending. Like it was crazy, and everything went ape shit there in the last couple seconds, but at least there was an ending. There was nothing. It felt 100% pointless.
Yeah, I mean, it was so phoned in that it felt like they very excitedly wrote every episode up until this one, and just kind of at this point said, I don't know, I give up. Just kill all the main characters and let's end it with the B characters. Because no one really cares about Calico, and if you did care about the Monterey cast, they're completely gone halfway through. And our most interesting plot ended at the beginning of this episode. And like Brian said, the whole moral of, oh, humanity doesn't deserve to go on because they're so bad. And, like you mentioned, Brian, it's like, humanity's so bad. It's like, but you just made humanity commit all its most evil act for the last, 50, 70, whatever years. How can it cuts it?
Don't put that shit on us.
Well, plus they, through their experiments, they were killing these hybrid babies that weren't taking, like, they were doing a lot of twisted stuff, and then even their deal with the lizard people, they're like, well, they have technology we like. That was it. That was the whole basis of their alliance. So I'm like, well, what do you? And then the line, I can't remember the girl's name, but the one they decapitate, where she's like, "You guys, now that you've achieved your dream, it's all going to fall apart." And like she's trying to give sort of like a speech about how, now, they don't have anything to fight for. It's all going to implode. And I don't know, man. They were throwing a lot of little messages at the end. It felt like a Twilight Zone episode that completely just went off the rails because typically in a Twilight Zone episode, you get to that ending and you're going to have this big, like, wow. If you want it was almost as if they wanted me to sympathize or agree with the aliens, but they failed miserably in achieving that because it's like I don't. I'm a matter of fact, I'm more interested in these lizard people. I was like, let me see what they're all about.
Yeah, they just kind of cram them in there, and you get very little information about them, even though, of all the things that didn't work, it kind of did. And like Spencer said, it would have if they had more time. But you're spot on with the Twilight Zone thing, because it felt like a Twilight Zone episode if Rod Stewart died in the first 10 minutes and they just scraped together all his drafts into one ending, which would explain why it's so scattered. Either way, it just seems like the writers towards the end just didn't care.
Well, when you mentioned the Twilight Zone reference, there were episodes that were similarly went out of control. Like there was things that didn't make sense. Everything kind of went in, and then there was an overarching kind of moral to the story. And sometimes it made sense, sometimes it didn't. However, when I invested 4 hours in this bullshit story,
Yeah.
literally, and like a 15-minute episode of Twilight Zone, that pissed me off.
If you going back to I think a week or two ago, I was like, if you take all the black and white sections and edit them together, it's fun. It's a fun little thing to watch. Probably be about an hour and a half, maybe less. That's cool, but everything else you could just ignore and cut it out. And yeah, it was just a waste. I mean, this makes the first half way more brilliant. The people that had issues with, and I have not read any reviews for this, but the people that had issues with the finale for the first half, I thought it was done well, and now seeing this one, I'm like, well, God, it's night and day. I think that first half there was way more vision and idea of what they were doing compared to this. To me, it just fell apart. It felt like you said, Larry, they melded in. It felt like it was the end of the season. They were trying to get these episodes written, and they were just like, I don't know.
Right.
You want to know what the difference between episode 6 and episode 10 are on IMDb?
Yes. Oh, they have scores?
Sure.
Or
yeah.
Oh,
Episode 6 is a 4.5, and we talked about it before. Like, it's bad, and people are saying it was good, but it makes sense, and then some people were trashing it. This one is a 3.6.
Yeah.
That's about what it deserves.
Brian, me and you have watched some, like all of us. Back in the day, me and Brian used to flip through Netflix, and when they used to do the star ratings and look for 1-star movies.
Yes.
And we watched them. Like, we did it on purpose. And some of those movies were better than this episode. And
yeah.
You cannot tell me. They definitely just didn't care towards the end. Or I think perhaps this is a sign that the modern portion of this was maybe like something that they were forced to do, that, maybe the company didn't like. Oh, we don't like this black and white in the 50s things. That's not what people expect from American Horror Story. Do a modern portion of it. Can you do that? Can the 50s be a flashback or something? Because it just feels so rushed and phony. You can't tell me that they were writing this and they thought, well, people are going to want us to end this with Miss Eisenhower and Calico. They're going to want to see how crap ends for them.
What they should have done after watching the whole thing, the 4 episodes, this is what I would have done. I would have kept the 1950s stuff roughly as is. The modern day storyline would have focused on a couple of those Men in Black agents and been from their point of view of what the mission is and what they're doing, and focus on all that stuff. That would have been way cool. First of all, every time they appeared, they were badass and way more interesting. and go that route. And as far as how to end it, I don't know. I don't know what the lizard people could have done something maybe, but yeah, it needed a rewrite, needed a restructure. They needed to completely wipe out those four. Those four characters should have never been in it, and that's my thought.
They really shouldn't have.
Not that I'm saying that I was ignoring you guys. I was looking at some of the reviews, and holy fucking shit! Like reading some of these reviews would be a podcast unto itself because they're hilarious.
Tearing it
Like,
apart.
oh, dude, no, well, yeah, those ones are funny too, but the 10s are even better.
Oh,
Yeah, dude, it was. Oh man, one of them said one of the best.
I mean, God, they have to be trolling. Like, there's no way.
Well, if they were going to make it a mess, and speaking of trolling, with my partial trolling in the previous episodes, which would have been better than this ending, the idea of Eisenhower and Nixon just coming in guns a-blazing.
I would have, dude. How good would that have been?
Exactly. Yeah, they come in guns a-blazing and, hand like a shotgun to Jobs, and he's in on it and everything. But it turns out Nixon is really a lizard person or something.
Dude, that's what Eisenhower wakes up. He's like, "How am I alive?" And Nixon's like, "The lizard people brought you back."
Exactly. If my point being, if it's gonna be a mess, make it a fun mess. This wasn't fun.
Yeah, it went from what happened to Lyndon B. Johnson. There's like it just jumped from Dwight to you just skip Kennedy, Johnson, like all that, and then just go straight to Nixon basically getting caught up in Watergate.
I mean, and that's what pissed me off was
years.
all of that was cool. Like, I like the whole deep throat revelation and Watergate and the way they tied it to the aliens. I was like, that's pretty clever. And then you have writing like that where you're like, okay, somebody knows how to write. Like, there's some clever shit here. And then you get to the other stuff and you're like, what is this? Like then it turns into trauma level writing without all the cool stuff.
And they could have tied, the Cuban Missile. They could have, when he said, we're here to distract, to keep people thinking of other stuff. And basically they took credit for Vietnam and all these. But the Cuban Missile Crisis, there's a lot of things that they could have tied in to being their fault. They could have just made a one sentence reference to. And we comment that a lot in dialogue and how important dialogue is. And for this to have some clever stuff, and then at the end, like both of you have said, one of the reviews, and this is why I was looking at it. Where's it at? Okay. It said, build the story. Then did the writers go on strike or what? Because
that's what it felt like.
Yeah.
Well, I don't really have much else to say. What do you have anything else? Anything else regarding the finale of Double Feature?
The only thing I want to say, and this is not another gripe, but it's another gripe, but the 50 stuff was at least interesting. When they put the big dome on, I don't remember the character's name, but I just know it's Cindy Crawford's daughter, Kaya. But when they put the big dome on that, they should have just played into that. The whole Twilight Zone, Doctor Who kind of sci-fi look. That's what they should have just kept going. They should have made it cheesier. I think that if they would have just hammed it up like that the whole time, kind of made it a little creepy.
Mars attacks it.
Yeah. It would have been better. When they tried to make parts of it more serious and tried to make me, take this seriously, when all the modern stuff was written poorly, they were forcing this idea that it might actually be a relevant part of the story down your throat, and none of it mattered. None of it made sense. Who cares? And instead of just weaving parts of the more modern stuff in, they tried to make it a focal point, and it was unimportant and uninteresting. I think they should have focused more on the hokey sci-fi aspect of it and just made it a little unsettling. And I think that would have bought them, like you said, Brian, 2 hours worth of screen time that they could have tightened up the story a little bit. And I didn't care. And I'm slightly frustrated that I watched it.
Agreed. And it could have been a good ending, like we said. Just if you're gonna go cheesy, cheese it up, or if it was action packed in the way you mentioned, or if it was sort of an existential crisis towards the end of Eisenhower, just contemplating what he did after enacting his plan, and as we also suggested earlier, attacking them or making a move and maybe making his way into that area of the White House they have sectioned off for the aliens, and finding out that there's only 3 of them, and that they only got away with as much as they did because they gave in to fear. That could have been an interesting way to end it. Either way, it just feels like maybe because it's so bad that this was phoned in on purpose. Like they were forced to make the modern day portion of this season.
Yeah. Well, if you want to hear us praise a season finale, look over to our Only Murders in the Building review. Dexter's coming up in a couple weeks. We'll be covering that. Look out for other stuff on the channel. And we appreciate everyone listening, even if you download us.
Bye.
Bye.